Katie Logan had fought battles before, but nothing prepared her for the storm that was about to break. For years she had been the steady force, the woman who refused to let her family's scandals consume her, the voice of reason in a world constantly on fire. But when it came to Will, her son, all reason burned away. When Will was in danger, Katie became something else entirely. And now, with revelations circling about Luna, Lee, and Sheila, Katie's fury was ready to explode into something no one in Los Angeles could contain. It began with relief. After the chaos of Will's entanglement with Luna, after the whispers that her son had risked everything in a scheme that could have destroyed his future, Katie clung to one truth: Luna was gone. Lee had been the one to break the news. At the hospital, in that sterile place where life and death met every hour, Lee told her that Luna hadn't made it. For Katie, it was a twisted kind of comfort. The girl who had dragged Will into danger, who had tempted fate and nearly cost him his life, was gone. There would be no more whispers, no more traps, no more nightmares. Katie could breathe again. But the bold and the beautiful had never let relief last for long. The update came like a knife to the chest: Luna was alive. The girl Katie thought had vanished forever was still out there, hiding, protected, and shielded by none other than Lee Finnegan and Sheila Carter. And worse than that, her son's near destruction was tangled in their conspiracy. Lee had lied. Sheila had helped her lie. And Will had been left to carry the weight of a night that should never have happened. Katie's relief turned into rage. Not the quiet kind, not the dignified composure she often clung to, but something primal. The kind of rage only a mother could feel when her child was put in harm's way. Will was her baby, her pride, the one person she would sacrifice everything for. And now she knew he had been targeted. At Il Giardino, Will had faced temptation, danger, and manipulation. Luna had drugged him, spiking his drinks until his world blurred and his defenses dropped. She had set a trap designed to drag him into bed, a plot that could have ended with his reputation destroyed, his name soiled, his entire future ripped away. Katie shuddered at the thought of what might have happened had he not pulled back, had fate not intervened before the worst could come true. Will had been a breath away from ruin. And now, to make matters worse, Luna wasn't just alive, she was carrying Will's child. The pregnancy, whispered behind closed doors, confirmed in hushed conversations, was the ticking bomb no one could silence. The baby that should have been a scandal buried forever had become the undeniable proof of what Luna had done. Proof Katie could never forgive. But it wasn't just Luna in her crosshairs. Katie knew manipulation when she saw it. She had lived too long among the Forresters, the Spencers, the Logans not to recognize a cover-up. Luna was the face of the trap, but behind her stood Lee and Sheila. Lee, the respected doctor, had faked Luna's death, told the hospital staff lies, spun a story that kept the truth buried. And Sheila, the eternal manipulator, had helped her. Together, they had made sure Will was left vulnerable, humiliated, and nearly destroyed. For Katie, there was no forgiveness. She stormed through the Forrester mansion like a woman possessed, demanding answers, her voice shaking walls, her fury impossible to ignore. To Ridge, to Brooke, to everyone who tried to calm her, she made herself clear. This wasn't about politics, it wasn't about family feuds, it wasn't about corporate wars. This was about her son. And no one hurt Will Spencer and walked away unscathed. Lee tried to defend herself. She argued that her lies were to protect Luna, to shield the girl from a system that would have destroyed her. She claimed she had been desperate, that her choices were about saving a young life, not destroying one. But Katie cut her down with a single truth: you saved her by sacrificing my son. You buried Luna's mistakes in Will's pain. And you think I'll ever forgive you for that? And Sheila tried to play her usual game, twisting the story, painting herself as the misunderstood ally, the one who had only wanted to help. But Katie wasn't buying it. Every word from Sheila's mouth only fueled her fire. You've been a poison in this family for decades. You knew what Luna did, and you kept it secret. You let my son carry the weight. You let him bleed for it. And you think you'll slither your way back into Finn's life, back into respectability, while my son pays the price. Katie's fury was no longer private. The press caught wind. Spencer Publications ran with it, not as a scandal about Will, but as a mother's crusade for justice. The narrative shifted. Will wasn't the reckless Spencer heir caught in a scandal. He was the victim of Luna's betrayal, of Lee's cover-up, of Sheila's interference. And Katie was the mother who refused to let the truth be buried. Heather Tom's Katie became the center of the storm, her voice cracking with heartbreak, her fury sharp enough to cut steel. Every scene was a tidal wave of emotion, Katie holding Will, promising him he would not suffer for their lies, Katie confronting Luna, pointing to her stomach and vowing the truth would not be buried with that child, Katie tearing into Lee and Sheila, exposing their crimes not just as mistakes, but as deliberate betrayals. The fallout spread. Lee faced professional consequences as the hospital board reopened every case she had touched, her credibility shattered by the revelation that she had faked a patient's death. Sheila's brief grasp at redemption slipped as the Forresters and Finn recoiled from her once more, reminded that her loyalty always served herself. And Luna was left cornered, carrying Will's child, unable to hide, unable to deny. For Katie, it wasn't about revenge. It was about survival. About making sure her son was never again used as a pawn in someone else's game. About proving that no matter what the Forresters, the Finnegans, or Sheila Carter tried, she would always stand as the wall between Will and the world that wanted to devour him. The bold and the beautiful had promised drama, and Katie's wrath delivered. The quiet, measured Katie was gone. In her place was a mother bear unleashed, claws out, teeth bared, ready to tear down anyone who had dared to hurt her child. Luna, Lee, Sheila, none of them would escape. Not this time. And as the truth unfolded, as every lie unraveled and every cover-up shattered, one thing became clear. Katie Logan had become the most dangerous woman in Los Angeles. Not because of power or money or manipulation, but because when it came to Will Spencer, she would burn the city down before she let anyone touch him again. Ridge Forrester thought he had finally closed a chapter in his life, but the bold and the beautiful never let chapters stay closed. A business trip to Europe with Brooke turned into something far more complicated than either of them expected. They were supposed to be professionals, partners in Forrester Creations, leaders presenting their fashion house to an international audience. But late nights, quiet dinners, and the weight of their long history crept back in. It wasn't a kiss, it wasn't a confession, but it was a moment. A look held too long, a hand brushed across the other's, a silence filled with all the things they had said and unsaid for decades. A moment of weakness. And that was all it took for their carefully balanced lives to tilt again. When Taylor learned about it, she didn't hold back. She had been burned too many times, left behind too often in the shadow of Brooke Logan. The fiery confrontation reignited the legendary triangle. Taylor demanded answers, demanded honesty from Ridge, demanded to know why after everything, after the pain and the vows and the promises, Brooke could still wedge her way back into his heart. Ridge stood silent, torn between two women who had defined his life, knowing that silence was an answer in itself. Then came Carter's request, innocent yet explosive. He asked Ridge to be his best man at his wedding to Hope. It was meant to be a gesture of friendship, loyalty, respect. Carter trusted Ridge, admired him, wanted him at his side on the most important day of his life. But by asking, Carter unknowingly pushed Ridge into the center of the storm. If Ridge accepted, he would be standing in full support of Hope's marriage to Carter, a marriage Brooke already doubted. Brooke had made her feelings clear. She didn't believe Carter and Hope had a future. She didn't believe the love was strong enough. She didn't believe her daughter should go through with it. By accepting Carter's request, Ridge would be rejecting Brooke's judgment, publicly siding with a union Brooke opposed. And if Ridge refused, he would betray Carter, leaving his friend abandoned on the eve of his wedding. The choice wasn't just about friendship or love. It was about loyalty. About which bond Ridge valued more, the loyalty of a friend asking for support, or the loyalty of the woman he couldn't seem to let go of, no matter how many times they burned each other. As if the tension wasn't enough, Taylor uncovered something that tipped the balance. While going through sketches at Forrester, she found one tucked behind layers of new designs. It wasn't labeled, it wasn't part of a collection, it was hidden. A wedding gown. Not just any gown, one that carried Brooke's essence in every line. The neckline Brooke favored, the flowing style she had always chosen, the touches that screamed Ridge's hand in designing for the only muse he had ever truly adored. It was unmistakable. Ridge hadn't drawn for hope. He hadn't drawn for a client. He had drawn for Brooke. Taylor stared at the sketch, realization cutting her deeper than any words. Ridge's heart wasn't Carter's to lean on. It wasn't Hope's to believe in. It wasn't hers to reclaim. It still belonged, as it always had, to Brooke Logan. The discovery turned confrontation into collapse. Taylor demanded to know why Ridge still carried Brooke in his heart, why he couldn't let go, why he pretended at neutrality while secretly holding on to love he refused to admit. Ridge faltered. He denied, then admitted, then stumbled through the only truth that mattered. Yes, he still loved Brooke. Always had. Always would. That truth blew everything open. Carter, unknowingly, was caught in the fallout. His wedding became more than just a union of love, it became the stage for another Logan, Forrester War. If Ridge stood beside Carter, Brooke would see betrayal. If Ridge sided with Brooke, Carter would see abandonment. And Taylor, left reeling from Ridge's hidden feelings, would once again see herself as the woman pushed aside. The triangle was alive again, sharper than ever. And all because of a sketch, a moment of weakness in Europe, and a man who could never truly choose between the two women who defined him. The stage was set. Ridge Forrester, torn between being Carter's best man or Brooke's last chance, carrying a sketch that betrayed his heart, standing in the eye of a storm that would consume everyone.